Welcome back to the Bayside. What is this show called? The SF Giants Talk podcast. I should have checked the name before I started that, but we're in it now. I'm Marc Delucchi. He's Kerry Crowley. We're going to be talking all the latest in Giants baseball throughout the season, bringing you here every Monday here on Bayside Baseball. And Kerry, this week we start the week. The Giants are 4-6. They got swept by the Dodgers, but won the series against the Padres, taking 2 out of 3 in their first home series. What are your takeaways from the past week?
I think the main takeaway for me is they did what they had to do against San Diego Padres at home, and that is build upon the energy that was going to exist on opening day. Because I think there were so many fans who were eager to get out to the ballpark and see a different type of squad and see a team that has a different type of energy than what you saw in 2022 and 2023. And look, the Giants have won walk-off games and home openers before. But I just think that when you do that, when you're trying to set the tone and set the stage for the season, all those people, when you sell out a game, they're willing to come back. And I thought that that was really important, that you don't get blown out in the home opener, that you don't lose in, a 4-0 fashion like they did on Saturday night, because I do think that first impressions, even in a sport like baseball, where there are 162 games, are huge. And so when you've got a big group of people looking to be impressed and you send them home the way you did on Friday, that's big. And then they win again on Sunday, albeit in a bit of fluky fashion. But fans will take a win. They'll take a win no matter how it comes. And to take 2 of 3 from a Padres team that I think will be better this year, I think it sets the tone for the rest of the season. And you will see good attendance numbers because of that for a little bit. Now, attendance will fluctuate. It's not all dependent on, your first home series, your first home game. But I just think that anyone who is around this team this weekend is probably likely to come back to Oracle Park. And that matters, Marc.
Yeah, and that's why you're the glass half full side of our pairing, because you didn't mention getting swept by the Dodgers really in that and for that week. But no, I mean,
Getting swept by the Dodgers. Oh, bad series.
but no, I think you're absolutely right about trying to. Again, we talked about despite the Giants off season, if you just looked at like the positive storylines, should have, like, I think could have been even more positive momentum if they didn't kind of shoot themselves in the foot with a number of things, whether we're talking about like the Rennell storyline or the what was the plaque stuff where they were going to take away like stuff late in spring training that just gave them some bad headlines. But the energy is still there for this team. Again, this was the most active offseason they've had arguably ever in franchise history.
Yeah, I know.
Like, not just ever.
I think we're so
Barry Bonds
reluctant
is
to
more
say
important, but
ever.
they weren't bringing in a bunch of people alongside Bonds when they got him in
Exactly.
'92. So this was the most active they've ever been. So all of that was there. And I mean, again, the win-loss record, and I think you're right, like, especially for casual fans, like the record matters, right? Because sort of a lot of people sort of getting them to the ballpark doesn't, like, the motivation will come from if you see, again, like, a 10-4 team versus a 35-22 team, right? It's like, oh, okay, this team's competing. I want to get out and see what they're doing, even if I'm a little less familiar with the roster. But as for the baseball itself, I mean, it's frustrating. It's the
Yeah.
Dodgers, right? Like, but I don't think I haven't been seeing this Giants team look overmatched in a way. I mean, like, look, they were overmatched against the Dodgers because I think everyone's going to be overmatched against the Dodgers this year. That's how this is probably going to line up, unless Ohtani controversy and a series of pitching injuries derail that pitching staff. Like, this is probably the team that's going to be the favorite in the National League West, and will ultimately seems. There's a long way to the playoffs, but it seems like them and Atlanta remain on some form of crash course here in the National League side of the postseason. But the Giants have kept, well, this is 2 series with the Padres now, where I think these two teams look very evenly matched. And again, the Padres only finished a game above 500 last season, but I still thought they were an 88-90 win team. They were a lot closer to me, the 2022 version of themselves last year than their record showed. And even again, there's a lot of questions about the roster because they lost so much. Obviously, one player on the Giants we'll talk about later, Soto over to the Yankees. But I still think that the expectations are they're an 85 win team. They're at least in that range. They're in the wild card conversation, which is where the Giants are trying to be, and they've now hung with them twice, and they now gotten through their starting rotation twice, right? Like,
Mhm.
Jordan Hicks has looked legit twice now. He's worked deep into games twice now, and he's done it with incredible efficiency, right? Like, it is shocking to me how quickly I have gone from a place of can Jordan Hicks be a viable starter for more than 5 innings, to now wondering the durability and sustainability questions, right? Okay, how many innings can reasonably be expected of Jordan Hicks this season? How long? It's clear he's not throwing at max effort, like, which is
Yeah.
what you need to do, right? If you're going to go from 100 miles per hour to being a starting 103 to being a starting pitcher. But that still doesn't mean 90%, 95% effort in big league fastballs over 6 7 innings is still going to wear on an arm, and some pitchers at the 50 inning threshold are just going to fall off. Some fall off at the 150. It's different for different players. But the reason I'm asking those questions is because if the answer's on the right side of things, like Jordan Hicks might be the best, like one of the best pitchers in baseball. Like it's like the stuff is that good, the command is that good, his feel for these pitches, and the fact that he's done this so quickly, right? Like this isn't, again, this is 2 starts, it's a small sample. He's obviously looked really good in the spring training as well. Like I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but again, you look at the numbers on the Stuff Plus and the other things, like these are, like, this is a Cy Young arsenal, like whether the
Yeah.
other factors and stuff are there. And again, it's on a staff that has Logan Webb and Blake Snell already on it.
Yeah, I think that it's not outrageous to say that he has the second highest individual season ceiling for 2024 of anyone on this Giant staff. Because I think that Blake Snell, coming off of Cy Young, you expect him to strike out, 11, 12 batters per inning if he's at his best. He's done it before. Kyle Harrison could get to that point at some point. I
Not,
love,
not
I
now, yeah.
love, I love watching Logan Webb more than anyone. Like watching Logan Webb, to me, you're seeing a true throwback starter do things that I wish were more prevalent throughout the game today. The way that he sinks the fastball is tremendous. I love the slider, the change when he's got it going. He can be as fun of a 3-pitch guy as anyone, but it's still a lot of pitch to contact, a lot of ground balls, and you're not going to see a 14 strikeout performance from Logan Webb. It's just, the nature of his stuff. Whereas with Jordan Hicks, like the ceiling is so high to where you could see incredible stuff over a 7-8 inning outing that a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I could have never envisioned until that Oakland A's spring training start, where out at the Coliseum, we thought, why is he going 5 innings, even though he's striking out 10? And now you're starting to see, like, this ceiling is incredibly high. Now the floor is significantly lower than Logan Webb's floor. The floor could, it could be pulled out from under him at the end of April.
Yeah,
If the
I mean, this could
Giants,
be. I mean, like, this is an insult to Hicks given his stuff, but this could be a Ryan Sadowski kind of thing, right? Like, there could be, like this could be a thing that absolutely any. I mean, it is going. The thing about it, right, is it all could be a mirage at any moment, right? And whether that's injury, whether that's health, whether it's just, again, Hicks has struggled with command in the bullpen, it's
yeah,
reasonable to expect that those issues could return at some point. And like I've said many a times, the Giants, in a way, if you're making the bet, you're making the bet that the Cardinals missed on player development on the pitching side, which again has been a consistent thing. The
that's a
Cardinals
good
struggling.
bet.
I was gonna say the Cardinals struggling to develop pitchers, the Giants struggling to develop hitters. You put that together. That's kind of probably the two best parallels at this moment in terms of those sides of the ball. So, man, it's so fun to watch every pitcher on this team pitch. Like even Keaton Winn in the loss this weekend gets cut for 4 innings, 4 runs early, and still goes 6 innings. The strikeout stuff he had against the Dodgers, that again, like Keaton Winn, like has, it's well, like Keaton Winn might have the least exciting, like the least electric stuff in the starting rotation right now, and he's throwing 98 mph with a nasty
Exactly.
Jason Schmidt style
Crazy.
splitter. But again, he is able to go 6 innings. We saw this right last season as a rookie. He wasn't necessarily getting strikeouts or swings and misses at the rate you'd expect given his stuff. But that's kind of the balance with him as he I think is learning to manage and trying to develop command to catch up with where he is as a pitcher. But again, the fact that he's giving them the length. And again, last Monday, we talked about Dalton Jeffries and probably making his last start with the Giants. The Giants are now through this. He's been optioned. He's still on the 40-man roster, though. It wasn't designated for assignment. But today, Blake Snell, the man we were talking about, is going to make his Giants debut here at Oracle Park facing the Washington Nationals. So what are your expectations for Snell this season? Like, what is the situation? Again, he's coming off the Cy Young. He's won 2 in his career. He's also had inconsistency or, had plenty of mid-rotation starter level seasons. Like, what are your expectations for Snell this season for the Giants?
It's a really tough question to answer because he's been a different pitcher in 2022 than he was earlier in his career, or excuse me, in 2023 than he
Mhm.
was earlier in his career. And if you look at the last 4 months of last season, Mark, Blake Snell had a 1.23 ERA. Like he was consistently going. I think he finished the season with something like 6 straight quality starts, 38 innings, 2 earned runs allowed. And I don't have those numbers in front of me, so I could be way off. But I do know that his numbers over the last 4 months were absurd. And he was
Mhm.
using a different pitch mix. He was pitching deeper into games. Look, he wasn't giving you 8 innings. He's not that type of pitcher. But I do think that it's realistic for the Giants to think 160 to 180, that range of innings, an ERA somewhere between 3 and 3.5, because there's going to be some regression. You're not going to have a 2.25 ERA every year. And he was the beneficiary of some good luck last year. I think that pitching at Oracle Park, the soft contact that he'll give up, there'll just be some fluky runs that are scored in Blake Snell starts that maybe he wasn't accustomed to, in a different ballpark. And San Diego is a pretty good place, to come from if you're coming to Oracle Park and looking to match your experiences. But I still think that you're getting a really high upside arm and someone who, again, has this extraordinary ceiling to where when he's on, he's someone who you want in a playoff series. And that's why the Giants paid the money to get him, because if you've got him, you've got Logan Webb, you've got Hicks, you've got Harrison, you've got when you're giving yourself options in a playoff series, you're creating a margin for error that didn't exist when you had Ross Stripling and Alex Wood, who inherently, even though you were going to try and get 150 innings out of them during the regular season, you weren't going to ask them to go more than 3 in the postseason. That just would have been a silly decision. You could think Anthony DeSclafani, 4 or 5 innings in the postseason. With any of those guys that we just mentioned, it's not outrageous to think 6. And I think that that's where the margin for error is built in. That's why they went and pursued Blake Snell. It's not about getting to this arbitrary win number of 87 or 89 to feel good about the season. It's about getting into the postseason and saying, can we win this series? And with Blake Snell, the Giants can say yes. And so that's really why I think they paid for him. And so I threw out all those hypothetical numbers, but those don't matter.
Yeah, I mean, right. Like, I think you're hoping, right? Like, again, his career ERA is 3.2, although, and like that's a very good pitcher in the big
Wild
leagues, right?
fluctuations on
Yeah,
that
with
3-2.
wild fluctuations within that. But I think some of and again, this is where Scott Boras, Blake Snell's agent, and Blake Snell himself are obviously making the bet on himself to take an opt out year. Is I do think some of the high variance stuff with Snell is a bit overblown. Like a lot of pitchers, it's the nature of like he wasn't hurt in 2020. It's just they cut the season down and he pitched every fifth day, so that's only 11 times. Like the number gets thrown around a lot, right? He's won the Cy Young every year. He's thrown more than 130 innings, but he's only done that twice, and that was in 2018, 2023. But even that's a bit deceiving because of the Tampa Bay Rays were doing Tampa Bay Rays service time manipulation. And so his first 2 big league seasons, he basically threw 150 innings between AAA and the majors. It was just they were doing some arbitration, service
Interesting.
time manipulation, and the Tampa's always had a deep staff. So,
Yeah.
he has really 4 of those years in his career. And again, that's since 2016. And again, when you take into account 2020, he's never, he's mostly thrown north of 100 innings, I think, every full season he's had, which again isn't everything, but it's something. Like, I think Snell is actually the thing that's been frustrating, right, is we've seen Snell, like, especially the 2020 postseason, notoriously early. He wins the Cy Young, right, in 2018, which is basically his first, which is, I believe, yeah, it is his first full season in the majors. So I think it was just he was supposed to be the next Scherzer, right, and he
Yeah.
was supposed to be like the next face of MLB, and he hasn't been that, and I don't think he's going to be that again. There's the chance he could build off the Cy Young year and change that discussion, change that narrative a bit. But again, I think he's been a consistently really good starting pitcher. Even the quote unquote bad Snell seasons are still like a very good 3 starter, right? And
Yeah.
what getting Blake Snell does, I remember when the Warriors signed Kevin Durant, and I forget if it was the first year or second year in the finals, he got hurt, right, and was out in playoffs or regular season, one or the other. And I forget who wrote the article, but the basic premise was the Warriors signed Kevin Durant so they could deal with Durant getting hurt.
Yeah.
And the Giants, like, signing Snell is the insurance, because if Logan Webb or Snell goes down, right, you still have the other one, right? And
Yeah.
again, maybe who knows, maybe now we could throw Jordan Hicks in that mix, but it's nevertheless like it just puts and again, there still is a lot of pressure on Logan Webb. There's always immense pressure on the ace of a pitching staff. but there was an immense amount of pressure on Webb, not just maintaining his elite quality performance, but also staying healthy after the back-to-back, basically 200 inning seasons he's had here. And getting Snell, to me, the most important thing is him just being present and being a level of pressure release, right? Just a level of release. Again, we talked a lot about the openers last season. I think there was also a mental toll that took on the other starters in the rotation.
Yeah,
Alex
absolutely.
Cobb and Logan Webb in particular, but Anthony Scafani, like these guys are, it's the professionals gets thrown around, competitors gets thrown around a lot. Like Webb really internalizes the I don't care how I pitch, I care that we win. And to him and to Cobb, they knew if they didn't get through 7, that they were putting the bullpen in a really precarious spot for the next 3+ days. And that's not the case, right? I don't think that's the case right now. And again, there's no way to quantify this, right? There's no way to know. Again, we talk about like clubhouse culture and makeup and all these things that are impossible to understand the value of, and impossible to understand really whether they're actually making a difference. But again, we know placebo effects are real too. And I think getting Snell in there, I think there has to be some level for Webb of, okay, like this is just, it makes it easier to go out there and pitch a little more carefree. It makes it easier to say, hey, there's a runner on third with 1 out in the 3rd inning, and I can pitch for the strikeout here because I don't need to worry about my pitch count getting a little
Yeah.
higher than maybe I want because I'm at 45 pitches here in the 3rd and I don't want to have to leave after 6. I want to go the complete game. It's like, no, I can pitch for the shutout from the first pitch. It just puts you in a position to be a lot more aggressive. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Webb's strikeout numbers tick up this season. Again, we'll see how it plays out. It's early for that very reason, that maybe he is a little less pitch efficient. Again, he prides himself on that efficiency, so I don't think I'm not expecting anything dramatic. Like he is very keen on trying to get a complete game that brings in a game time under 2 hours. He is very hopeful that he can
That's
achieve
a
that one
really
day.
good point.
He was really crushed last year. There was one game he came 1 hit away from doing it, and he was very upset post game with himself. But I think there's just the down ballot effects of having Snell present. I think can be really significant on the offensive side. Again, it's the Giants offense. They don't score runs. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what happened to this franchise.
Not my lifetime.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. That's true. But I want to start. There's sort of 2 players in particular. One, I think it was obviously expected. The other, less so. Thairo Estrada and Nick Ahmed up the middle have really struggled offensively at the plate. Like I think you look at, across up and down the lineup, there's some players whose numbers may not look there, but you look at, again, even early, it's average, exit velocity data, whiff rate. Like, again, I'm not worried about Jung Hoo Lee. Like Jorge Soler was obviously starting to get into ones. Matt Chapman's been making impacts. Like Michael Conforto still heading for that Triple Crown. McCary, you look out. But I think most of the performances offensively, like there's nothing too eyebrow raising, too concerning late. But Nick Ahmed and particularly Estrada at second have been kind of hitting, like I should mention Patrick Bailey, who's actually hitting the ball quite hard to start the season as well. I've really struggled, and it's a lot of uncompetitive at bats. And I think that's where you worry about getting towards a situation where you had last year, right, where the bottom sort of third of that lineup was just an easy out for the starting pitchers and really kind of gave away 3 innings. Essentially, you lost opportunities at rallies. What are your various concern levels for those 2 players? And, what do you think the options are for the Giants, and when do you start looking to that? Because they are both great defensively. Like Ahmed remains elite defensively at short. Estrada remains is a standout at second base as well. And there's a lot of value to having that. But again, the Giants are an offense that has a lot of, at best, good hitters. It doesn't have those stars. So it's harder for them to have a 1 to 2 spots that they're kind of giving away.
Yeah, it's interesting with Estrada because we all could have seen this coming with Nick Ahmed. Like, that, the defensive metrics are going to like him, and he's never had an above average OPS plus in his major league career. I think his best year was a 95 in that category. And so you knew, like, you're getting a 600 OPS guy who's going to give you slightly better defense than Brandon Crawford gave you last year because of his age. And eventually you're going to cycle through him and go to Marco Luciano when you decide that he's ready. Now, are the Giants going to decide that on April 30th, May 30th, or June 30th? I don't know. I think if Ahmed keeps this up, April 30th to May 30th is probably in the equation there. I don't think they saw this coming with Thairo Estrada. And that's what makes this really hard because, you'd like to look under the hood and say, well, everything's there. The exit velocity is good. The swing decisions are good. You can't say that right now. And I think that that is probably the most troubling part of what you've seen from Estrada so far. And I do think that the walk-off probably helped him from a mental standpoint. And, that can carry a guy for a week. But, at what point do the Giants start to reevaluate this? I think realistically, they wait for 30 games before they really say, like, we need to make some big changes with Estrada. We need to work on things. We need to start cycling Wilmer Flores at second base. We need to look at opportunities to isolate Estrada against just left-handed pitchers and figure out, do you want Flores facing righties at second? Do you want Fitzgerald being a guy who you put in there? Do you bring up Casey Schmidt and have him be a utility infielder, second baseman, even though the numbers on him during spring training were not indicative of someone who you trust over Thairo Estrada right now? I think that's probably the big issue is there's no plug and play guy. Like there's no easy solution to that. Whereas the solution to Nick Ahmed is one that, hey, if Marco Luciano doesn't put up numbers, you're willing to stomach that. Mm-hmm. If you don't get anything out of Thairo Estrada and Casey Schmidt's not in position to help you and Tyler Fitzgerald isn't giving you anything better, you're just taking up spots on the 40-man and the 26-man roster and getting nothing out of a position. And that's where it gets really difficult. And so I think the Giants can be patient there. I do, for whatever reason, I've got like this irrational confidence in Thairo Estrada more so than other players, just because I think the guy is really mentally tough. And I think that, he's got a compact enough swing that if he starts to see the ball well, I think that hits will start to fall for him. And I'm not
a ball
worried
player, right? Like he's the quintessential scouts. Like he's a ball player, and like because the kid, if you want the like concern side for Estrada, it's that underlying metrics have kind of thought he wasn't a very good hitter pretty much since he's been a good hitter for the Giants, right? Like he's never been a guy who's hit the ball hard. His sort of MO, right, has been making contact, avoiding strikeouts at a very above average rate, and presumably being a guy who, again, not quite all the way going back to a previous era of baseball, but in the sense of he's hitting a soft liner, but he's able to, okay, I'm going the opposite way, not because I'm late on the swing, because I see there's a shift and this is a spot, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So the expected weighted on base average and stuff, they're below average, but it's probably because he has a hit tool that's actually making his soft contact play a bit better. But again, when you get moments like this, when you get the struggles and you get the second half that happened last season, there is the growing concern of, well, maybe this is something that isn't as sustainable in this role. And again, Estrada was a guy who, when the Giants first got him, I think they thought they had a really great left-handed, like versatile bench bat, right? And like he emerged, he kind of stumbled into playing every day, right? Like Donovan Solano faded toward the end of his last season.
Tragic.
With the Giants.
One of my all-time favorite hitters to watch.
Right. And in a way not too dissimilar from Thairo, both in terms of how he popped up and metrics kind of thinking he wasn't quite as good a hitter elsewhere. Although, yeah, anyway. So we'll see how this goes with Thairo. He has an aggressive approach at the plate. I think the defense, you buy him plenty of time for that reason as well. And and Estrada especially has earned a lot of patience, again, given he's been a staple in the line for the last 2 years. As you mentioned, Wilmer Flores gives them some weak spot. I am still gonna be on. I'll add one more name to this mix, and in part because I've been much higher on him. I think I've been one of the higher folks on him for a while now, and this is going to probably upset some Giants fans because their exposure to him has not been great. But Brett Wisely is someone who I think he's a really good athlete. I think he was a player. Again, I'm not going to lie and tell you that he wasn't abysmal with the Giants last season in his pretty sizable big league sample. But again, he was one of the guys that it was like, if you look at his development trajectory, similar to Blake Snell, he had spent the previous season as an everyday player at Double-A in Tampa Bay system. He was an above average player at Double-A, but he was not someone who you would look at the development trajectory and say he was ready for the big leagues yet. And that played at the major league level when he was there. When he went to Triple-A last year, he was an above average player. He's back down at Triple-A now, and he's probably been the River Cats' best player through the first 2 weeks of the season. His OPS is, I think, north of 1,000, but he's also, I think, let me look. Yeah, 7 walks and 2 strikeouts and 34 plate appearances. That's a guy who seems locked in. And again, he is a left-handed hitter, which is something that to complement Ahmed and Estrada. I kind of was expecting, and I understand why Fitzgerald got the first shot over Wisely to be the utility guy. And again, I don't necessarily think they'll make that switch anytime soon. But I was kind of thinking Wisely might have had an outside shot. He had a fairly quiet camp, and so that's where he would have had to play himself into that competition. So we'll see if he can maybe play himself into that. But again, Wisely's a guy I'd keep an eye on, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up sort of carving in a role. Again, that isn't necessarily he's taking Thairo Estrada's job, right? But if he's playing 2 days a week over there, and he actually, again, I've heard mixed evals. Some folks think he might be able to slide over to short on occasion. Again, I think Ahmed's good enough defensively that they'll just stomach that out until Luciano they want to deal with. But yeah.
I'll add this on Estrada. I think I went to Oracle Park once last season as a member of the media, and it was right when Wisely was struggling big time, which, could have been any pocket when Wisely was in the big leagues. But I said to 2 people that I really trust, I knew that they were going to give me an actual answer. I was like, Brett Wisely's not good. Why do you believe in him? And they're like, actually, he is going to be good one day. We're going to be patient with him. You wait and see. Like, the numbers under the hood tell us a story that we think that this guy can do it. That's why he hasn't been DFA'd yet. It's why there really hasn't been a conversation about that. He's probably not in danger of that. More so probably 34th, 35th on this 40-man roster. And you don't want to be 38, 39, 40. There's some people in the organization who believe in what he does. And so I never saw it last year. I didn't see the tools. I didn't see the skill set. I thought he just looked a little small on the Major League diamond. Not that you can't overcome that, but it's just when you're facing big time velocity and the balls are being hit harder, I think it tends to overwhelm some of the smaller players. And we'll see, because he will get another shot. And so I'm glad that you brought his name up, because I'm about to get proven wrong on Brett Wisely, because I was so emphatic that he was.
We'll see, good. Right? Hey, don't give me too much credit before. Let's not count the chickens first.
Yeah.
But I think, Wisely to me is it's easy to underrate him as an athlete. He was a 2-way pitcher in college, actually closed, was up to the low 90s. He's got good speed. Again, the exit velocities, it's not like he's putting up big time power, but there's more pop, at least that's played at the minor league level. I heard some of those things as well. And I remember even hearing a conversation that, the Rays have a lot of guys who they trade for the 40-man or get Rule 5. They've always been that way. And, someone was asking around like, well, okay, what is this guy? And people in the Rays system were like, no, this was a guy we wanted to keep and we knew was just going to get snagged in the Rule 5 draft if we didn't trade him to the Giants. And so that was why we did that, to get something out of a player that we liked. So we'll see how it plays out. And again, like you mentioned, Estrada's going to have a lot more patience. Ahmed is going to be more interesting because, again, a good defensive shortstop is incredibly valuable. He's currently the 100th percentile in the league, I think, by fielding value. So I think he's literally been the most valuable player in the league defensively so far this season by that's savant metric. So we'll see. We'll wrap up here. The Giants are again, as we mentioned, with Snell on the mound tonight. It'll be Kyle Harrison tomorrow and Jordan Hicks on Wednesday against the Washington Nationals. I think this is the first series where it's like, okay, Giants, you've had excuses. I think a lot about, if there's one reason Gabe Kapler got fired, it's that the Giants last season lost at least one series to 8 of the 10 worst teams in the league. And they lost a series to the Oakland A's, the Kansas City Royals, the Colorado Rockies, and Washington Nationals. I believe they were 1-5 against the Nationals.
They were abysmal against the Nationals.
Yeah.
Who can forget Logan Webb's 1-inning 6 earned run start?
And so, for the Giants last season that came so close to the playoffs, it wasn't getting crushed by the Dodgers. It wasn't getting crushed by Atlanta or something. It was, they didn't win the games that are supposed to be the gimmies, right? We can obviously talk about that, like the Colorado series late in the season when they were in the driver's seat for the wild card and they just, failed and get Coors. This is the chance. Obviously, Bob Melvin, you got a new staff, you got a new team, you got the Nationals here. And this is where you come in. I mean, at least take 2 out of 3, but if you can get a sweep here, get above 500, they'd be 7-6 at that point and start to get the momentum churning for this season.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 is pivotal. And I think that, this is kind of the throwback. You mentioned this, why is Bob Melvin here as opposed to Gabe Kapler? You mentioned that they lost all those series that were winnable. I think that one of the things that a Bob Melvin led club and a veteran laden club gives you is a team that maybe goes 39 and 43 or 40 and 42 on the road, but has the potential to win 50 at home. And you start winning 50 at home by taking care of business against the bad teams, by always taking 2 of 3 against the teams that beat the Giants last year, the teams that the Giants thought they should have beat, but ultimately didn't last year. And so it's a really cliche way to look at baseball. I haven't necessarily loved doing that through the years, but I think that the way the Giants have built their roster and have, assembled this coaching staff has kind of invited that back into the discussion of having those conversations that Bruce Bochy was having in 2010, 2011, 2012. You just got to grind them out on the road and then win at home. And I think that that's what this team was built to do. And this is a series that's, you don't want to say it's a measuring stick series. I certainly wouldn't be out on their ability to make the playoffs if they lose 2 of 3 or get swept. But it's just one that first impressions are huge. And the Giants are in the process of making one, and they can build upon the one that they made in this opening series against the Padres with a series victory over the Nationals.
Yeah, you don't want to sap the energy out of early season, right? Like Snell, Snell in his debut, there's some real excitement there. You can really get the fan base churning in a really exciting way. And again, I was over on a Just Baseball pod hosted by my friend Javi Reyes, who the Baseball versus the World. We had to do bold predictions. One of my bold predictions that a lot of people are going to owe Scott Boras an apology next offseason. This has kind of been the Boras, like people are really taking their pot shots because of how Snell and Chapman and stuff. I understand there's also a union war going on. You can read about that. I think the Athletic has the most in-depth coverage I've seen on that so far. I plugged to Kerry's workplace. But not unpaid, unsponsored. But hey, there's a lot of guys that on prove it years. Again, Michael Conforto, one of Boris's clients in that situation. Blake Snell tonight, right? Like Blake Snell has made kind of $100 million bet on himself, right? Like he probably could have got, if he wanted to play his cards differently, he probably could have got somewhere in the mid $100 million range in guaranteed money. He played it out. Instead, he's got the 66 from the Giants here. He's trying to have another Cy Young caliber season, right? And he's going to be pitching, I would imagine, for that, again, 2.25 ERA, right? Whether he gets it or not, obviously, like you mentioned, there's a lot of luck that plays into that. But, he apparently struck out 11 AA hitters in a scrimmage against the Giants. If he comes out his first day in his home debut, his debut with the Giants, again, it's a Nationals lineup that's free swinging. That's not necessarily full of potent hitters. There's a way you get 10 strikeouts, right? You get 5-6 shutout innings even. That's not we don't need a no hitter here for there to be some real momentum, not just for the team, but also then for Snell to kind of become someone who is now a semi face of the Giants alongside Webb, right? It's not just because right now it's kind of Logan Webb, Jung-Hoo Lee. I think Patrick Bailey is starting to creep into that place, but I think he needs to sustain some of this early offseason offensive success to get to that place. Snell can be in that very quickly because, again, this fan base was built to love starting pitching. It was built to love dominant starters like a Cy Young winner like Blake Snell.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that's where we'll wrap on this week. Thanks again for tuning in to the Bayside Baseball SF Giants talk show. I'm Marc Delucchi. He's Kerry Crowley. If you like this content, stay tuned. Bayside Baseball. We're bringing you the first D&D actual play show episode on Wednesday. I'm really excited about that. Critical Hit. Check it out. Got some other videos churning out. If you want to just support what we're doing, go on and join our Patreon. Make sure to like and subscribe. Do the basic stuff. You all know the drill. You can follow us on social media. I don't know. Type our names. Our names are in the description. I should have been more prepped on this part. But anyway, thanks again for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. See ya.